Welcome to our pod, and by that I mean on Wednesdays we read. I'm Hannah.
I'm Laura.
And we are two best friends who usually do a deep dive into a new book series one book at a time, but sometimes we are on Intermission.
Intermission.
And we are discussing the themes and characters of The Fires of Treason by Michele Quirke. But before we dive into all of that, Laura, what are you reading, watching, and or enjoying?
Hannah, I watched a movie that was so forgettable that I
Oh.
forgot to bring it up.
Oh, what was
that
the
I watched
movie?
a while ago. I watched Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumanium, or is that what it's called?
Quantumania.
Quantumania?
Yeah, Quantumania.
I can't even remember the name.
I get it.
Bad. I just don't think that movie was good. Quantumania. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It was not that good of a movie. I was confused like most of the time, I guess, and I really think it got a lot of hype for what it was, unfortunately. And now it seems kind of a little bit empty, knowing a lot of the things that happened and what directions they're going with certain characters and everything now.
You mean how they had to like excise an entire character out of the
Yeah.
MCU?
Well,
And
did you
they
watch
didn't
Loki?
do a background check on him at all? Like, yeah, I watched the first season of Loki, but like all that
So
stuff
you
was
didn't watch
out.
the second season of
I haven't
Loki
seen the
then?
second season yet. No.
So they tried in that they obviously had a really a lot of Jonathan Majors' character, basically. There was a lot of him in that, and they were really trying to, I feel like in that he was King the Conqueror is who his character is. I just had to look it up, sorry. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel like they were trying really hard in Loki to set him up as like this new big bad to replace other big bads that they've had previously and to kind of open up like here's our next chapter. We're going to be using this villain, that all these things are going to be happening. And so this movie, this Ant-Man movie, I think was like the next thing-ish that or around the same time that came out with Kang the Conqueror in it, and now it just feels ick even
Now they can't
watching
do
it.
anything about it. Yeah.
Yeah, you just feel ick watching it, and also just knowing that this whole thing happened, and then the movie being very like kind of just not great. I wouldn't even say that it was like an ick movie. It's not like it's a cringy movie. It's just that it's I didn't think it was very good. I I don't
It
know.
was really strange because that was the one where like it's supposed to be like, what if it was fathers and daughters and mothers and daughters? But like I
But like
just didn't.
Michelle Pfeiffer had a weird
I mean, I don't think Michelle
plot.
Pfeiffer wanted to be there. I think they were
I
like,
don't
hey,
think
what if
any of
we,
them wanted to be there. None of them seemed to be
yeah,
really into it. I also just, I don't know. I just didn't like the whole like what Michelle Pfeiffer was doing all these things we didn't realize when she was away for like an entire lifetime. How could you like have a relationship with another guy? I'm Michael Douglas. I'm like, oh my gosh,
oh my
what are we
gosh, Michael Douglas.
talking about here, Michael
Well,
Douglas?
here's the thing.
Come
Michael
on.
Douglas has made a career of being a wronged man. Like, if you look at his like movies, they're all just like, what if Michael Douglas was the most amazing person ever, and then those women just messed with his emotions, like,
I and
so
like
gross.
that one guy was back as like Modoc was his name,
Oh yeah.
and I was just like, why do we need him? This seems dumb. I don't like this. I did laugh when he said that he was going to be part of the Avengers, or that he was part of the Avengers now. That was the best part of the whole movie when Modoc was like, "I'm so glad that I'm part of the Avengers now," and they're just like, "No, no, you're not the Avengers."
That's not what's happening. So
No. But they
sorry.
had like William Jackson Harper in this, and I feel like he was very underutilized in this movie as well. And I think sometimes that happens in these Marvel movies that they bring in these big actors, and I'm like, you're really just kind of wasting their time. I hope they get paid a lot because it seems like they're not doing that much, and they could be doing a lot more.
I
Um,
honestly forgot that MODOK existed in this movie until you told me. Most of the things, like I saw this movie in theaters, and
did
all
you?
of the
Oh, what a
things you were
shame.
saying to me, it's like I'm hearing them for the first time, other than I knew King the Conqueror was in it, as well
Because it's
as
so forgettable.
Yeah, as well as like I remember Cassie being there. Like
Yeah,
that's it.
because Cassie is now an adult and, he's dealing with parenting a teenager. So, yeah, that
I don't know. Um,
was interesting. I was not a big fan of that movie, but what can you do? I mean, I don't know. That some of these Marvel movies are really hit or miss for me, and I don't know. I think the length of them also just they got to shorten them up a little bit here. Like they're
they're
getting too
getting
long.
way too long.
They really need to wrap it up by like an hour 45.
Yeah,
I really
I
miss
agree.
the days of like movies that were like an
90
hour
minutes,
or
like
90-minute movie. Like that's good.
I agree. I
But
agree.
yeah, like the fact that I have to break up Marvel movies and watch them in several days, like too much. Too much. And this one I think was just maybe a little
It
too
wasn't as enjoyable
weird.
as our TV Tuesday discussion of Agatha All Along, which
No,
people should be
Agatha All
tuning in
Along was
for.
incredible writing and absolutely fantastic. This one had Bill Murray doing Bill Murray things, and yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not I liked the first Ant-Man, and then honestly
That one was okay.
I I haven't rewatched it since the first time it came out. Like I didn't mind it when it
Mhm.
first came out. Um, I cannot tell you what happened in Ant-Man and the Wasp, other than I
I have no
remember
idea.
that the evil villain was like the woman who like shifted a little bit. But couldn't tell you why. And
Oh, okay.
then,
I'm sort of remembering that now that it's
hmm
somebody else who was trying to like move through time, right?
yeah, and get into the quantum zone or whatever.
And that's how they got Michelle Pfeiffer out, is or no, that's the first one, isn't it?
I think no, it was the second one that they got Michelle Pfeiffer out
Okay.
because there wasn't enough time to like get Michelle Pfeiffer in the movie in the first one. So that happened in the second one.
Okay.
And that is all I can remember about it. Like that those movies don't really exist after you watch them.
No.
I remember the characters a little bit and the I remember the vibes, but I have no memory of the actual movie itself. So,
I I didn't get a lot of like the cringe moments from that in terms of like the way that Iron Man and Iron Man 2 just make me roll my eyes.
yeah,
But
they're enjoyable, but they're not the best
they're not
movies. They're
memorable
forgettable.
at
Yeah.
all. They're not memorable. Where like some of the other and even like Thor 2 I remember things about unfortunately.
Is
But
that the one? No, 'cause it's number
that's the
three when
one
he's
where
like,
they totally waste Stellan Skarsgård's talent and make him run around in his underwear.
honestly can't remember Iron Man 2. So the Iron Man movies, you could
No,
quiz
not
me
Iron
on.
Man 2, Thor
Oh,
2.
oh,
That's
Thor
Thor 2.
2.
Thor 2.
Oh, okay. I do remember
Iron
a
Man
lot about
2 is the
Thor
one
2.
where I immediately was like, "Oh, bald man, he will be the villain, of
Welcome
course."
to Laura and Hannah try to remember Marvel movies 15 years
Well,
later because like
actually
I
no.
can't.
Iron Man 1 is the one with Jeff Bridges, I believe, right?
Yes, that is Jeff Bridges.
And then
He's in it,
number 2 is the one where there's a reporter and then her
isn't
No, no,
it?
no. I'm thinking 3.
Number two is the one
I feel like
with
2 has
Sam
another bald man.
Rockwell.
Sam Rockwell. Yes, thank
Has
you.
Sam Rockwell as the evil villain. And then,
Yep.
sorry, we're ruining Thor movies. And then
No, these are Iron
three,
Man movies.
oh, my God.
Sam
I'm
Rockwell's
just
in the Iron Man
today I
movies
tried to leave my office to walk into the ocean and there was no ocean out there, so I couldn't walk into
because you're in
it. So,
Wisconsin. So,
yeah, so I couldn't walk into it. It was really
okay.
unfortunate, but that's where my brain is at. So,
Okay.
um,
But Iron Man, yes. So the
Iron
first
Man.
one is Jeff Bridges, bald man, obvious villain. That totally makes sense. Bald
Hmm.
man is a villain. Okay. And then the second one is Sam Rockwell, and his wife is the reporter in that one that
Mm,
Robert Downey Jr. like hits on briefly.
got it. And
And
then
then
the
the third one
third
is
one
where Pepper
is
Potts gets burned horribly and it's Christmas time and Iron
yes,
Man's like, I can be a nice guy and have a cool relationship with
with a
a
child.
sidekick kid.
Well,
And
also, the third one is like when the evil villain was Tony Stark's emotional crisis after
yes,
the Avenger movies. So it was a wild
Iron
time.
Man 3 is the best of the Iron Mans,
Yes, it is, but like it's
in my
still
opinion.
not very good. Like it's
No,
not great.
no.
Um
But yeah, I
But
think that one's the best of the Iron Mans. I prefer the Captain America movies, honestly, to the Iron Man
but I
movies.
don't even like the first Captain America movie all that much.
No, not that one totally, but that one sets up Hydra, which is around forever.
Yeah. Yeah, I
And
do like Civil War though. And the Winter
Civil
Soldiers.
War, I thought was really good, and I
Yeah,
like
Civil War was amazing. That
The
was pretty
Winter
good.
Soldier show.
Yeah, I do like the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I thought that was a really good TV show.
Yeah, I thought that was great.
Welcome to the Marvel cast.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I do really like the Guardians of the Galaxy movies.
I have not seen the third one yet,
I have not seen
so
the third one yet.
oh, maybe we should do a watch party of
Yeah. I also liked
it.
Thor Ragnarok. I
I
thought that
liked
one was
Thor
pretty good.
Ragnarok a lot.
I
Um,
liked Thor Love and Thunder also because I thought that one was like quirky and doing something different and just kind of fun. I appreciated that one.
it
But
bored me a little, but I get the people who
yeah,
liked it. I don't think it's a bad one by any means. I was just a little
I
bored.
think the best ones though are like the two Black Panther movies and
Yes.
then Shang-Chi is like
Shang-Chi, yeah.
miles away the
Yeah.
very best.
I also like Captain Marvel movies. I liked the
I do
Marvels.
like Captain Marvel too.
I watched the Marvels. I thought it was fun. I think people who didn't like it didn't understand the movie. Like it's supposed to be
Or
quirky and a little
maybe
stupid.
there's a
Like
reason that they didn't
they
like it and
didn't
it's
like
because
a
like
movie that was primarily about
women.
women and the majority were women of color.
Yeah.
And about
So
like
okay,
women having joy. I think that that's probably a reason they
got
hated
it.
it because it's
Got
a
it.
very
Figured it
joyful
out.
like fangirl movie and healing relationships and things like that. And it's quirky and
Yeah.
stupid in some parts, but in a good way.
I hate to be this person. Actually, I don't. I like to be this person.
Name of
Whenever
the episode.
whenever people like start talking about Marvel, I'm immediately interested. Like this has become a new like sub hobby slash interest for me to just kind of obsess over Marvel and the fandom, honestly.
Welcome to me
I'm
around the time that WandaVision came out.
I'm just a little bit too annoyed with people not understanding some of the work, I guess. And
Yeah.
whenever people say what their favorite Marvel movie is, it tells me a lot of things about them. Like it really
Yes.
does. Especially if these are people who have started watching the show at like if you tell me what point you started watching the show and like if you started watching the shows in or the movies or both recently and you're like, "Oh yeah, Iron Man 2 is the best one." I'm like,
Oof.
"Okay, red flag. Red flag." I and I'm sure there's people listening that are like, well, I feel like the earlier Marvel stuff was a lot better. I just feel like they've gotten a lot deeper in some of the shows and some of the more recent things, especially I really appreciate like the representation that we're getting in some of these more recent movies and shows. And it's just better in my opinion. So I have a hard time when people are like, well, the
Well, also, if you look,
earlier stuff is so much better. I'm like, I
so,
just don't agree with that.
so
And
if
it
you look at
really
the
tells me a
older
lot.
versions of the Marvel universe, you have like these Tony Starks, the Captain Americas. These are all like like Tony Stark was not famous until the Marvel movies popped up. He was not a
Sure.
well-known person in the comics because people found him boring or they didn't really care
Well,
about
and the
him.
other thing is too, like I know I'm hoping this is where you're going with this. If it's not, you can definitely correct me. But I feel like a lot of times I will mention like, yeah, I just don't think the older stuff is that good, and people will be like, well, Robert Downey Jr. really just made Marvel a thing,
No,
and that
that's
these wouldn't be anything without Iron Man movies. And I'm like, okay, but it doesn't mean that the newer stuff isn't like doing more, even though they're like not given the budget and have people like continually being incredibly rude and racist about things.
so it's like a yes and because those movies originally came out when they were trying to get a new audience and so they were basing it on what quote unquote like nerd culture was doing at the time, which
Mhm.
was more like Halo or things of
Mhm.
that nature or that were more like guns a-blazing, comment. Like Tony Stark starts the movie as a war criminal, pretty
Oh,
much.
yes.
Like
Yeah.
he, maybe not war criminal,
I
that's Jeff
mean,
Bridges' character, but he is
he's
selling,
making weapons of mass destruction.
yes, he's making weapons of mass destruction, and you get to see things go boom. Like that was the
Yeah.
whole point. People
It's
loved it.
tons
They
of
thought it was
action to the
amazing.
point of like Transformers level action.
But people who enjoy that version of Marvel, I'm not saying like that's wrong or that's bad, but that's also not what the comic books were. Like if you were an actual
Yeah.
comic book nerd or you look into the lore of the various comic books, like there are millions of different versions, there are millions of different stories
Yes.
being told based on the time period they're being written in. So what you do not like is the fact that we have progressed from when Iron Man started,
Mhm.
but movies are meant to progress.
Movies.
They are not meant in like they're not made in a vacuum. Comic books are not made in a vacuum. Like things change. There are a million different versions of comic books. There are a
Mhm.
million different versions of these characters to the point where you can have this like media and have it be its own quote unquote world. And it's interesting because you're pulling from different things but making them key for this world we're in now, which is like why
It's
the
interesting that you
Agatha.
brought that up because I recently saw a thing on TikTok where someone was like saying, funny how some of you have certain political opinions, but you're fans of X-Men.
Mm-hmm.
You like X-Men comics? Interesting. Those were political all along, and I think you missed the message. And I was like, yeah. But I'm willing to give people like, I have nostalgia factor for a lot of bad movies. Like I
Right.
definitely do. And
Last week we talked
you know
about
what?
Pitch Perfect and John
Yes.
Tucker Must Die. I'm not
Yes.
above
I
it.
I say all the time, Seabiscuit is my favorite movie. It's
Yeah.
not the world's greatest movie. I I have a fondness for it and nostalgia. And so I'm sure there's people like, shut up about Iron Man, you're totally wrong, blah blah. And you know what? That's fine. I hate to yuck people's yum. Like I feel bad doing that, but I think I get mostly frustrated with like the criticism that I hear constantly about how new Marvel stuff is bad. And I can't really figure out the reasoning why the things are bad. And it comes down to usually the things that people are quoting as bad involve women or people of color like pretty heavily. So that really kind of like flips a switch in my brain, I guess. Like, is this a valid criticism? I don't know. Because
Well, and this.
I think just recently, look how like people bombed Agatha all along. And
Mhm.
before it even came out, people were making that meme where it's like Marvel is dead and it showed like Captain Marvel, the movie, and then it was like Marvel is back and it showed I don't know, Guardians of the Galaxy, and then it was like Marvel is dead and it showed Agatha all along, and then it says Marvel is back and it shows the new Captain America movie that's coming out next year. And I'm like, interesting how the ones with women are Marvel is dead. Like, okay.
Well, and that's it's just I don't know. Took I think people
It's
would
a
be
really complicated
unhappy.
discussion, honestly.
I think people would be unhappy either way because if you just made like another action-packed movie, but it just happened to star a black character,
Hmm.
you would say that they were ripping off Tony Stark. Like that's just what would happen. And so then it's like, well, what's going to make you happy? Because it's not going to be just repeat, rinse and repeat with different characters and having new dynamic discussions that are keyed into what we think as a world today versus the Iron Man like
Of
post-war industrial
2000.
complex that we were a part of
I
at the
guess it was probably
time.
2003 or something.
Yeah, but like when did the first Iron Man come out?
It had to be after 9/11, I would assume.
Oh, it was definitely after 9/11. It was 2008. So like
2008. Okay.
but that's still like
So big
Obama
9/11
era,
influence.
like Obama was coming in, but 9/11 influences were still there. Like
Hmm.
this was during like the like proud to be an American years
Yes. Yes.
where that was what was being told. And I think the frustration isn't that like I think people would be bored if it was the same thing over and over again. So I don't know what people want other than they want to feel a certain way when they felt when it was 2008. And I'm so sorry. Like
A lot of
I'm
people are reaching for the same thing over and over again. And like, I get it. I rewatch Parks and Rec all the time, but I'm not like
but you're not
shouting like, "We need
screaming
Leslie
at
Knope all the time," and I think all shows without Leslie Knope are bad. Like, no.
right. You're not looking at the next mockumentary and being like, if it were only The Office with Steve
Yes.
Carell in it, like those movies already exist, so just go watch them. And I think like,
Mhm.
I don't know, I get a little bit annoyed when people have friction when like quote unquote movies aren't made for them anymore. And it's like they're still
Yes.
made for you, but you're just used to being the ones that they're catering to, and that's not
That
the
it's
case
centered on.
anymore. And like learn how to not do that then. Like there are
I
so many
and
things
I also
I've
kind of appreciate that Marvel, in terms of its diversity, is starting to like redefine who heroes are and what it
hmm
means to be a hero. I mean, it's always been questioning that, but I think just in terms of like the types of shows that they're putting out and the types of movies that they're trying to center certain actors or actresses, it seems like they're purposely trying to say like heroes come in all sorts of different forms, and
yeah,
you can't just be like Robert Downey Jr. is the only hero. Like I really appreciate that they're tackling like all sorts of morally gray characters, some that are just plain good, some that are, you know, people from all different backgrounds in life and everything. I'm specifically thinking of like Ms. Marvel. Like that
yeah.
was a
That was
really
such
great
a beautiful
that
show.
was a really great show, and I thought it
Yeah.
was just a very interesting portrayal of like a different background for a character.
hmm
And I just kind of get a little PO'd when people are like, "Oh, well, all the new Marvel stuff is bad." And I just like right at the beginning was like, I didn't think Ant-Man Quantumania was that good.
No.
So there are recent things that I'm like, they're not that good, but I think it has to be more from like I have to know what the reasoning is if
Right.
I'm going to back up you saying like, "Oh, this wasn't good or that wasn't good," especially because there's so many criticisms of these properties that are not in good, coming from a place of good intentions.
Right. I agree.
You can criticize something, but be well intentioned about it, I guess is the
Yeah.
my motto at the end of the day. And I just feel like a lot of Marvel fans, unfortunately, do not try to do that. And so then I get on my soapbox and I just double down on like Iron Man is bad.
Well, and I'm
It's
sorry, like Deadpool and Wolverine, the whole part was like the entire joke was how dead all of this repetitive stuff was.
yeah.
Like, that was the whole point of the movie. And it
I
was,
haven't seen that one yet, but I knew that that's what it was about. Like Ryan Reynolds was pointing that out in all of his press.
yeah, exactly. And like, that's the whole thing is them making fun of it over and over and over again.
Hmm.
And bringing back these like characters who have been around that we didn't like the first time or doing all this stuff and like hoping to get a very famous like that one was a little bit too much for me again because it's like putting a hat on a hat and like at some point I
Sure.
just think it's beleaguered when people still are having these reactions of like you can't do that to my show, and it's like, well, I don't even
Yeah.
know if we're at the point where we can make fun of it yet, but
Hmm.
I guess that's what we're doing.
Sure.
So I don't know, but we're
Sorry to
making
take you down that
no, it's okay.
rant,
But like
but
we're
I
literally
think
making
about that a lot,
another
honestly. And
Fantastic
it just,
Four movie.
what's that?
Like we're making another Fantastic Four movie. So
Yes.
like
And
you're still getting the same thing over and over
we're
again.
still recycling things the way that you want them to be recycled.
hmm
So, yeah, that's happening. We'll never get more Hulk movies, so enjoy that garbage fire that you've got.
Right. Yeah.
Oh,
So
um, yeah. I don't know. I just kind of think about this a lot in terms of like fandoms and how they can become really unpleasant.
yeah.
And I just feel like there's not a lot of critical thinking that's done within certain fandoms. And unfortunately, it seems like Marvel is one of those. And I don't know, we've talked about this ad nauseum.
Yes.
So I will stop.
I same complaint, different day, but like it goes
Yeah.
back. I don't know. I've been thinking about that
And
because
just have good intentions, I think,
yeah.
when you're trying to critique things like this. Because like I said, like for me, I it does set off a red flag if people are like making a blanket statement like new Marvel is bad. Like I need to know why.
Yeah, yeah. it goes back to like it's weird as we get into the millennial of it all because I feel like we're the ones being I posted about this on our Discord, join our Discord, but I feel like
Hmm.
millennials are the ones being targeted more and more. And it's interesting to see what media thinks we need to be targeted for. Because,
Hmm.
like, I was thinking about that
Sure.
in terms of our recent complaint about 28-year-old women, 38-year-old men, you know?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, wait, it's our age group that they're trying to capture.
Hmm.
Women our age want a 38-year-old man. Men our age want a 28-year-old woman.
Yep.
Like, and that is, I'm
Yep.
like, I think you could look at that and be like, wow, how dare Hollywood? And I'm like, no, then like men go look at women our age, like
Hmm.
go to the people who are your age, and like then Hollywood will follow if it's not selling. Like, that's the
Yeah.
whole point. Because these rom-coms, it's supposed to be like what will get women in the seats and what will get them to actually get their boyfriends to join. And it's
Hmm.
like that's what they're trying to target. So
Yep.
start stop frothing at the mouth for like Zendaya, who like I like.
Sydney Sweeney and Glenn Powell.
Yeah, like Glenn Powell it just got announced that there's a rom-com coming up with the girl from Sex Education who's 28 and Glenn Powell is 38. So
Oh
like
my.
and that's the same with Glenn Powell and Twisters. Like I don't think
Yeah.
I like Glenn Powell is very attractive. Women our age love him, but
Yeah.
like men our age start liking women his age. Like I don't know what else to tell you. Like so sorry,
It's
that's me on my
interesting
rant.
because I that is like an interesting thing to point out, like what kind of messaging they're trying to get, or like what the target audience they're trying to message them with, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if you like apply that to like some of the recent Marvel stuff, it really makes me wonder.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's interesting, and I think it'll be interesting in this upcoming administration as people start saying, "Well, how do we capture the people who we didn't realize felt not seen?" And it's like, well, you made white women, or not white men. I mean,
Yeah.
you made women in general, especially 30-year-old women, the target of all vitriol for 20
Mm-hmm.
years. So, and they still watched all that media. So it sounds
Yep.
like you might be fine.
Yep.
Like, I, yeah. So,
I saw this TikTok about it was a man that had created this, and he was stitching a another person's TikTok that they had made about how expensive their groceries were, that they had like $393 worth of groceries. And I really appreciated this stitch because the man that stitched it, uh, he was like, I'm telling you right now, you don't know how to cook. What I'm seeing right here is that you don't know how to buy in a way that is efficient and like save your money. Like he
mhm,
says, I know that I can tell that you're from like a privileged position, that you've never been in a situation where you've had to be worried about food before just based on what you're buying.
yeah.
And there's a lot of white women that have been posting on TikTok about like how expensive their groceries are, but people are calling it out, especially black creators are calling this out because they're noticing that all of the grocery hauls are like very much convenience meals. They're full of snacks. It's like
Mhm.
the one
And it's
woman,
always
she
name
had,
brand. Like it's
yeah, it's
always
always
name
name brand
brand.
stuff. And the one woman had like 8 containers of Pringles,
Hmm.
and then she had like a bunch of Jimmy Dean's, like microwave breakfast and stuff like that. And then she's complaining about the price of things. And he was like, I'm sorry, but like when I was growing up, we would get rice, we would get a bag of potatoes, we would get a box of macaroni, this type
Hmm.
of stuff. And he was making very true points. Like
Yeah.
if you buy the staples, things that are actually fillers and like vegetables,
Right.
your groceries should not be that high. But we live in such an age of convenience
Hmm.
that people are just so used to going and getting snacks and all these things that they are really buying things that are non-essential and then unsure why their grocery bill is so high.
Well, also, I think that goes back to like we do not have home economic classes anymore, which
No.
used to teach people how to shop on a budget. Like these were things that like I,
Or even just how to cook. I
yeah,
just like
even how to
even more
cook.
basic of how to cook.
Yeah.
There are so many people that don't know how to do any sort of like cooking or anything like that, and so they don't
Hmm.
buy anything that would involve any kind of baking or cooking because they
Yeah.
don't know how to do it.
And we have people who aren't getting paid enough, so like they don't have time off to
Yep.
learn. You do not like there is something
Oh,
to be
and
said
that's a
about
huge
like,
factor too, that
mm-hmm,
you don't have the time to make things because you have to be at work.
mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's a lot of factors that go into it, but I just think it's interesting the call outs of some of
Oh
these
yeah.
people who are complaining about grocery prices. And I
I think the
completely
call
agree with a
out
lot
is
of the
very
people of color
deserved
who
because
are pointing out the white women who are crying about how high their grocery bills are when
yes.
they're getting all prepackaged snacks and a bunch of microwave
Well,
meals.
and there was like a recent one where a woman literally was like, I have to count the cheese slices in my packet. And she bought like one of the expensive Aldi cheese slices that had
How
like
did she?
16 mini slices in it that's meant to like go on a charcuterie board. And it's like, there's literally sliced packaged cheese that's the same price that will get you like more bang for your buck
Yes.
2 feet over. And all you have to do is hand your child 2 slices of cheese and they can break it into squares as they eat. Like that's
Oh
all it
my
takes.
gosh.
So there, I think there's yes and, but I think we do
Hmm.
not give
I
people the
and I,
tools and
yeah,
education that they need, but also people need to learn their privileges.
yes. I think that and this is maybe being a little judgy, but just based on like the stitches, like what I can see of the people's homes, they, they're
They're not in trouble.
they're not in trouble. They're
No,
not people who are like they're not people who are going to be worried about being unhoused or anything like that, just based on the view of their kitchen where they're
right.
complaining about how expensive groceries are. So I do think that there's definitely many layers to this and everything, but yeah, I think that I was more making the point that like people don't understand how privileged they are and
No.
that they can even just go and buy a bunch of prepackaged snacks and then be like, "Oh, my grocery bills are so high and I have tons of pop and I don't understand why I can't afford this." And it's like, "Yeah, well, the CEOs, they've also figured out that you just want to have
Yeah.
microwave meals and pop and a bunch of Pringles, and that's why those things cost more."
And you
So,
don't want us to regulate like programs to help people educate themselves because you think
no,
people shouldn't
absolutely not.
be educated unless it's privatized. I don't understand. So,
Absolutely not.
well, those were lots of rants.
Yeah. Hannah, what are you reading,
uh,
watching?
so
Sorry
for
to be such a downer. I'm in like
we're in
I
a weird
apologize,
mood.
listeners. I've been
Laura's
in
about to go on vacation.
not a great mood, and it's just been the world is
The,
scary and the
yeah.
world.
The world. So I read Citadel by C.M. Alongi. You
Yes,
and
how was it?
I both really wanted to read this book after we saw her at an author talk. We had lunch
Mhm.
with two people who had like traveled from Chicago up to
Yeah.
Milwaukee to see her. So,
Yeah,
and
they were
she
big fans.
and her books hadn't arrived on time because of production issues. So
Yeah, that was
I got
so
it from the
annoying.
local library, which I was very excited about. And I really liked this book. I thought it did
Hmm.
so well at the world building, and it's such an interesting science fiction book. It's follows this girl who is nonverbal, and she lives in a world that does not seem to understand what that means, or they
Hmm.
ostracize her for it. Her name is Olivia, and she comes from like a unique background where her mom uh was in a relationship with someone and she got pregnant and it was very normalized in their society to get married and her mom said no. And then her mom went on to pass away and she has to move in with the dad's family through like a very specific string of events. And the dad is someone who is in power and he likes being in power, but she has questions about the world around them. And she does such a good job of world building because they
Hmm.
literally live in this place where the world floods like all the time.
Hmm.
And there is a
That's scary.
flooding forest, so you cannot leave the bounds of the city without like putting yourself in danger if you don't have boats and things to keep yourself protected.
I kind of
Um,
like the imagery of that though. Like that sounds really beautiful.
it is beautiful reading it, just reading about like the
Hmm.
water rising over the tree levels and being
Yeah, that
able to
sounds
like
awesome.
put boats through the trees and things like that. Like it's gorgeous the way she describes
Hmm.
this world. And it also leads to a lot of stuff because like they're dealing with overpopulation and a lot
Sure.
of like
So like
discussions.
climate change issues. Mhm.
Exactly. And so they go to try to find a new place, but out in the world, there are these monsters that they think are demons. And based on their world religion, these demons have to be eradicated so that then they believe that they are fallen angels who are put on this world to kill the demons. And Olivia is an atheist who isn't sure what's going on with that. I thought this was a fantastic novel. It did lose a star for me because Olivia's nonverbal, and there is a touch of magical healing of this type of, I don't want to say disability because I don't think it's a disability, but this kind of nonverbal communication that she has to write her things
Okay.
down. Something happens during the book where some people are able to now communicate with her, and I don't always love that when I'm reading about fantasy worlds when we're dealing
Sure.
with people who have similar issues in our real world who don't get to have an easy way of communicating that, changes.
Yeah, I think it's hard for people with chronic illness and uh, disabilities to we want representation,
Hmm.
but then to read about something being magicked away, it really kind of stinks. I know like even myself, this is not usually present in fantasy things, but I've spoken many times about how I get very frustrated with the magical pregnancy after
Yes.
the characters have dealt with infertility. Like that, it just is an empty feeling because you think you're getting representation and then it's like immediately taken away.
It's the belief of like, well, you're only going to be infertile until you get pregnant. And it's like, well,
And
where's
it's
the
like, well,
representation
obviously.
of someone who like doesn't
How
get
about
that
how about
journey?
somebody that doesn't get that?
Yeah. And that happens a
And I
lot
think
in
that
media.
the same thing is true of a lot of illnesses and disabilities that
Hmm.
people live with their entire lives, you know?
Right.
So,
And I believe in this world, she's coded as autistic. And I think
okay.
other people with autism might have an issue with that. So
Mm-hmm.
that was the only thing that I didn't love about the book.
Hmm.
But overall, I don't think that that's a deterrent. I think it's a make sure you're careful when you go into that with that expectation that
Sure.
that's going to happen. So it's more of a trigger warning than anything.
Hmm.
And then
I also think it's maybe like I'm I'm willing to be a little more open-minded about it if the author's handling the situation fairly
yes.
well, you know what I mean?
Yes, and she does seem to like care. When we listened to her talk, she talked about the sensitivity reader she had and how she wanted to take this very seriously because she was writing about people whose experiences were different than her own. So I don't think the author was like, uh, I could be oversensitive. I think a lot of people could read
Sure.
this book and see no issue with it, but it rubbed me the wrong way a little bit, just from things I've
I
read.
feel like it's good to like have that perspective because just even though you think other people might not feel that way, there might be somebody else who does feel that way, or you might point out something that somebody didn't think about before.
Yeah. So overall, good book. Highly recommend. Just be aware of that one thing that
Sure.
demoted it from a 5 star down to a 4 for me. So,
Yeah, that's good context.
and then I also read The Conductors, which is a historical fantasy and mystery
Okay.
that follows
About a
a
conductor.
woman named Hetty and her husband Benji. They are magical people who were enslaved
Hmm.
and escaped with and now and used their
Is this by
magic.
Nicole Glover?
Yes, it is.
I own this
Uh,
book.
you own this book. Okay, great.
Hmm.
So Hetty is someone who has magic a lot in this world. There are many Black people who are born with magic, and when they were enslaved, it was used against them. But she was able to escape and use her magic during the Civil War to help free slaves. Now they are emancipated as of this story, and they're living in Philadelphia. And they
Hmm.
use their powers to help solve cases. And a friend of theirs gets murdered, and they have to look into it. And honestly, this was a good time. Like I thought this was a really good
Hmm.
historical novel. I thought it was interesting. I liked the way the magic worked. She uses a lot of like celestial zodiac signs for her powers, which was
Hmm.
interesting to like call those into power. I was interested in the murder. I also like it because it has like real world historical context where like at the beginning of
Sure.
the book, she and Benji, you find out that like their marriage is a marriage of convenience for protection because she goes into a lot
Hmm.
of spaces she
Makes
can't
sense.
safely be in, and Benji can keep her protected in them, and they have a good companionship. That started with companionship of just traveling on the Underground
Hmm.
Railroad together. And, there's a lot of trauma that you get to see on the pages of the book. A lot of people who lost loved ones due to slavery, and a lot of like discussions over like
Hmm.
Hetty feeling sad about like her sister not being able to save her sister, and she's still searching for her sister, and discussions of like when is it okay to let go and when is it okay to keep looking for yourself and for your own
Sure.
peace. And I really enjoyed that. I thought it was really good.
Yeah.
It was an audiobook and it was easy listening. I'm definitely going to listen
Who's
to
the
this
narrator?
second book. The narrator is Bonnie Turpin, and I thought she did a really
Okay.
good job. I liked her a lot. I wonder if there's anything else I've listened to of hers because I almost thought I recognized her, but I
Okay.
couldn't be sure. Um, but yeah, I thought it was a lot of fun, and people should read those because, I think going back to our discussion of like Marvel comics and the zaniness of different things, like we should read not only people of color's trauma, but their
Hmm.
joy. And I think that this is a
Yep.
good mix of like social justice and mystery and
Yeah, and the
interesting
history of it
things.
all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So highly recommend. And then I haven't really been watching anything, but I'm still playing lots of Stardew. On my recent save, there was not a single rainy day in the fall, which was frustrating because it
Wow.
mean I had to water my crops every single day, and that
Yeah.
is rude.
Irrigation. That. Mhm.
Laura's like, yeah, I know. My
I was
real
going to
world
bring up
life.
something that I remember happening to us in college, but I will tell you after we are
Oh,
done
okay.
recording because it,
Is it embarrassing for me?
no, it's not.
Oh, okay.
It's, I just want to be careful of the listenership.
Got it.
So
So it's good
I
to
will
know.
tell you off the air.
Oh,
There are
perfect.
secrets, listeners.
Shall we dive into the themes and characters of the Fires of Treason?
Let's do it.
So I really thought, like in this book, it worked for me. Their ages, this felt like a bunch of 16 and 20-year-olds
Oh,
just.
absolutely. I feel like Michelle Quirke has easily figured out how to write characters age appropriately.
Yeah, it was nice to not have to be like a kid who walks in and they're like, "Don't worry, I will sacrifice myself, and I will only
That they're
sacrifice myself
incredibly
from here
mature and
until
they know all
tomorrow."
these things about diplomacy and everything. Like,
Right.
I kind of hate when that happens. Like, we're quick to call out, like, kids aren't that smart. So, yeah, I also appreciated that, Hannah.
Yeah, I really liked that. I also liked that, like, I don't know. I think in a lot of books that are historical fiction, I do find it interesting that she chose to have characters who, like, their arc was, we're never going back. Like, that that kingdom is toxic from the inside out, and so we're going to remove
Hmm.
ourselves from it. I think it's interesting because usually in books like these,
The theme is they're going back.
the theme is they're
They're
going
gonna fight.
back, they're going to fight, and the theme is like it's your duty as a princess and prince, like it's
Mhm.
again like you have your privilege and fight for what is right. But I do think that like in history there are probably princes and princesses who like noped out of there. Like if you've ever
Sure.
watched The King's Speech, which is based on history, like
Hmm.
it's about a prince who was never supposed to be king, but his brother noped out of
His
there and he
Yeah,
had to take
brother
over.
abdicated
So
the throne.
like I do think it's interesting to look at that sense of like this does happen in history and we're looking at two
Hmm.
of those characters instead of what we're typically used to, which is the story of unsung heroes. Like this is just like
Hmm.
two people existing, and I do think that that's interesting.
So love that you brought that up from like the King's Speech and not the actual like Queen Elizabeth's father.
But no, I don't
Like it's
know
a
who the
fictional story. I love that. That makes me laugh so much.
I do know it's based on
There's
a
this
true
show called The
story.
Crown, and
No, I know it's based on a true story. It's just I'm gonna remember Colin Firth over or Queen Elizabeth's father, like
Albert,
Albert. I remember that it was because his brother wanted to marry someone, and this is all
who was
from
divorced.
who
Yes.
was divorced, and this is all from watching The King's Speech. So, like, I didn't know that history before watching that movie because of
Interesting.
my obsession with Colin Firth. Like, um,
I am unfortunately one of those people that has done too many deep dives on the royal family.
got it. I didn't
So
realize the royal family was someone people were obsessed with until adulthood. Like, it never
they're like
occurred to me.
weird celebrities. I'm not gonna lie, I feel like they should be under scrutiny more because
Yes.
there's no reason that there should be that much money in that family, and
Mm-mm-mm.
like why on earth does that monarchy still exist? I'm unsure. It's mind-blowing to me, really. But I do think that they are fascinating from the standpoint of like the way that they are celebrities, and I think that that's why The Crown really stood out to me as a show too, because it was just like kind of saying that out loud, where there's like the episode where they're like, we're gonna act like we're normal people that all of the United Kingdom can relate to, and everybody was just like, nope, that didn't land. You guys seem awful.
Yeah.
So,
I don't
yeah,
know.
but
I have very little interest in the royal family because I did try to watch The Crown and I was like, I'm not that
mhm.
interested. So give me Regency era period dramas or murder mysteries and I'm all there. But like, tell me it's about the king and queen and I'm like, I'm a little bit bored. I think they're
I feel
boring.
like I remember mentioning The Crown to you before, and you were like, I don't want to watch shows about people that are still living. And I was like, okay, fair enough.
Yeah,
So,
and I tried to watch it and I found it deeply boring. Like I was like, I don't
okay.
really care that much about these people, and I,
It's
yeah, it's just not
honestly
for
like
me.
a better produced Lifetime movie.
Yeah,
Like,
I do think
it's
that's true.
a much, if you like took a Lifetime mock, like situation, you know how they always like take portrayals of
Yes.
things. If you made one of those but made it like way better and
Hmm.
cleaned it up a lot, that's what The Crown would be.
So I've realized this about myself. I can't really watch with like direct eyes. Um, things like Lifetime movies. I want to listen to
Oh, I
podcasts
don't
that
ever watch
discuss
Lifetime
them.
movies.
But like even like The
I
Crown,
just
I
know
think I
of
would
them.
if I could have a podcast that told me what happened on The Crown, I would listen to it.
Oh,
But
there
I
is one.
don't oh, I'm sure there is. But I don't really and I'd be more likely to listen to that than actually watching the show because I don't have an interest in like sitting and like paying attention to that show. But like if I can multitask with that in my earballs, I'd be happy. So
I think
um
I'm just fascinated with them, honestly, from the standpoint of like, why do we keep like giving
yeah.
them so many things and letting them do all this? And so many of them are bad. So, yeah.
Um
But
But
yes, this is
I
a
do think
historical
that this is
fiction.
very
Yeah.
like historical fiction. This is what would happen in like in the King's Speech and not in real
Yeah.
life.
I just love that you're like the King's
I
Speech
thought
is a fiction.
I thought when I brought it up, I said like based on a real story, but I did know it's based on a real story, listeners. I just like that's my
It just makes me
representation of
laugh.
what happened. But I do think that they kind of show like that could happen, and we're just looking at those
Hmm.
two people, and I think that's interesting to see that happen, especially with like a younger generation, where I
Sure.
think sometimes these things get built up in our minds as like it's so important. But like
Hmm.
history doesn't know that it's happening when it's happening. Like
Hmm.
people who are undergoing it think like I have more things to do in my day. So like
Hmm.
Greg has bigger fish to fry. He's trying to heal from his pus infected wound. Like
Yeah.
he doesn't, but like in years to come, they'll be like, oh yes, there's the story of the person who was he committed treason and people wanted to fight and he said he didn't want the throne, and I think like that's interesting, especially in context of like Bernadette and the king, who are convinced that they're the main characters in everything,
Hmm.
and they have a right to their own like indulgences. And like in history, they
Hmm.
will not be well loved and they will not be remembered kindly, and they won't be as important as they think they are. And I think that that's an interesting thing to
It's an
assess.
interesting, yeah, it definitely is interesting to kind of like take this book and think about like how history as a whole,
Hmm.
we how we look at certain people and how our perception of them changes over time. So yeah, I do think that that is something that the author was trying to do, and it worked pretty well. I also just think though, like if you're if you're going from that theme, like going into specifically like Greg's POV and just being like, why do I need to care anymore? Like I'm checked out. Like I'm done with this. Like these people
Yeah.
hate me. I don't want to care about this anymore. I have a lot going on. I'm sick. I'm injured. I have PTSD. I just do not care anymore. And then to just like have to literally continue to be stressed out in all sorts of situations and then deal with your sister who is being a 16-year-old. I think that that's really interesting too, to just to like specifically look at his standpoint of how he would be feeling going through all this. Like how frustrating. Like you just come back from war and you are hoping that things are going to be different and your father still is awful, your sister still is awful, your betrothed doesn't like you.
It doesn't.
Uh, it's a
Yeah.
hot mess.
I it's Greg is an interesting character because I found myself like getting a little bit annoyed with his like holier than thou self, but I like that you had the perspective of like imagine what he's been through because I was like, oh yeah, I haven't been thinking about that, and I also think about it from the perspective of like you're an older child and I'm a youngest, and so
I
I
well, and I think did you connect with Elizabeth more? Because I feel like I was much more annoyed with Elizabeth.
between the two of them, I didn't like Elizabeth's like ridiculousness, but
Mm,
there were moments where Greg is like scolding her all the time. And I'm just like, okay, we get it. Like she's going to be a ridiculous 16-year-old. So like you expecting her to be better than she is also disingenuous because you're not better than this. Like you frequently break your own rules
okay.
over and over again. You like I understand he's sick, but like he does expect to kind of be waited on by her. He does expect her to be at his beck and
Hmm.
call. And he
That
did
seems more just like unfortunate gender roles that are
yeah,
present.
but he's pointing out her hypocrisy of like you're not a princess anymore. You have to be willing to do this. And it's like, well, you're not a prince and like you two are on more than equal footing. So like
Sure,
stop being the same, like stop being a hypocrite. Like that was my biggest thing with him was I was very annoyed. And I don't think Elizabeth is like a perfect bastion of goodness,
sure.
but there were moments where I was so sick of reading like how often he was like you should be kinder. And it's like, you haven't been kind. You're sitting there drinking,
I think they
screaming at her.
both have a lot of like hypocritical moments because
Yeah.
there's so many times that Elizabeth would say something and I'm like, really? Like you're especially when it came to like Clara or
Oh, yeah. She was, I, again, I think
some of the other women, I'm just like, come on.
this is a fascinating look at like sibling roles because like that's also like such a cousin move to be like, I'm
It's
3 months
fascinating to me
older than
how
you.
you're like very annoyed with Greg and like that's such an oldest child thing to just like constantly be nagging on your younger sibling. And I guess I don't get that because like I am not like that with my younger sisters.
Right. It's a different experience,
I
but
don't have that type of relationship, I guess. I almost feel like my sister and I don't fall into sibling like age order roles. So I do kind of remove myself from some of these things just because I'm like, I don't know that I would get that. But it's interesting to hear you, a youngest child, say like Greg is so annoying when he's like constantly harping on Elizabeth. Like, come
it's
on.
just it was just
Makes me
like there
laugh.
were so many moments where she tried like I think about the fact that like she finally blew up at him for like something that was like he was wrong in the situation and then he's like I guess I should have just died and just never it's like oh, that is such an oldest child thing of like you pick and you pick and you pick and finally like one of your younger siblings like owns you and you do not have the sense of self to like be like okay I could take that comment and digest it. It's like well I guess I have to go die now and it's like that's not what I was saying. Like I was frustrated with you.
I
Like
guess I don't understand. My younger
and
sister owns me constantly, and I can't retaliate.
but like
She's
also the
invincible.
again with like the cousin thing like that is also like I have a ton of cousins and like I know what it was like to be a youngest sibling and then have younger cousins and you are a dick to them like you are the worst human being and I can admit that now as an adult like where we're all on an even playing field but like I remember because like that was how my siblings treated me so you think it's a one-to-one of like oh, that's how I get treated by people who are older than me. That's how you treat people who are younger than you. And I remember like there's just a very certain cousin energy where like that happened to be with other cousins too. And like at certain points you would just be like, no, I'm not going to deal with this anymore and I'm just going to remove myself. And that they would be so mad at you because they were like, no, I wanted to hang out with you though. And that also happens in this book where like Claire's like, I'm just gonna sneak down to the tavern and I'm not like she's been harping on me and I'm gonna go do what I want. And then she's like, how dare you? I wanted to hang out. I'm like, this is such like messy family energy and like it is
I
very
can see that. Yeah,
realistic. Yeah.
I can definitely see that. I guess
But
I don't have that cousin relationship thing either. I never was like interested in being like my older cousins, I guess.
my mom famously, I had one cousin who was like uh, 10 months older than me, and I wanted to play with her all the time, and she was obsessed with my older sister. And my mom would frequently be like, look, you're never going to be her first choice to hang out, but if you ignore her for like an hour, your older sister's going to get sick of her, and then she will come play with you. So just like wait out the hour, Hannah. And so
Sure.
like that was what I was raised with, and that is this messy cousin energy that I'm
Sure.
sensing from this book. So great job
Yeah,
of
I get
getting
that.
like realistic children dynamics in a book down.
I also think that just the age appropriateness in terms of like the relationships with like the love relationships seems
Yes.
very accurate. Like the way that Clara is so upset over like I'm not saying that arranged marriages are okay, that she should be in
No,
an arranged marriage, but the way that she like reacts to I my boyfriend Channing and
you blew
Channing.
out your microphone so hard there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
The way that she's just always like, I want to be with my boyfriend Channing, and that she, has these moments where when she is able to be with him, she just totally disregards anyone else's safety, including her
yes.
own, because she's just so in the moment and excited to be with her true love. And it's like,
Yes.
yeah, you're 16, and that's an interesting thing to write when it's like, yeah, love looks different. And it's not saying that it's a lesser love. It's just
Mhm.
saying that love it takes different forms. And when you're 16, it feels really intense and can be really intense like that to the point that you're literally putting people in danger. And then you do. So I thought that that was actually pretty accurate as well. The Clara and Channing running off and going dancing and having outrage over their
This
situation.
is
So,
uh this is giving Walter Stratford from 10 Things I Hate About You energy. I just looked up the quote. You're 18. You don't even know what you want, and you won't know what you want till you're 45. And even if you get it, you'll be too old to use
yep,
it. And that is
that's pretty much it.
Clara is a 16-year-old messy child who
Yep.
just wants to be with Channing Tatum. And like there was a moment where he proposed and I was like, well, you two are not getting married.
No. And that's the thing. It just doesn't feel it feels like, oh yes, this is young relationship. And I know people that did get married, like that were high school sweethearts. There were actually quite a few of people that I went to high school with that
Yeah.
were high school sweethearts ended up married. But I do think that it's fairly rare to marry your high school girlfriend, boyfriend, significant other. And I think that everyone kind of assumes, that relationships when you're 15 or 14 or 16 are very serious and they are
Yes.
true love. And I I do kind of like that you and I were able to pick this out of like, yeah, that doesn't seem like that'll last, but in the moment it's very serious and very
Mhm.
real to them.
Well, and Clara, you could tell the entire time that she's like trying on rebellion. Like
Yes.
and every time that like she gets called out on it, she just digs her heels in deeper. So she'll be like, no, I love him. Like, Daddy, I love him, you know? And like the entire time, I'm like, you're gonna last like 2 weeks before you realize that this is like not fun and you're gonna run out of money soon. And then and like, I
Life's a
feel
lot harder when you have to sleep in tents and not use a carriage.
hmm. And she's just trying on rebellion where she's like, oh, I get to go to the tavern and I get to go dancing. And like
Yeah, it's a clean house
anytime
situation.
Elizabeth is like pointing out to her, like, hey, dude, you're being really dangerous. She's like, you're just jealous. And like that's again where people are like, yeah, you are just jealous. I'm like, well, she is jealous and it's coming from a bad place, but she's also not wrong.
Sure.
Like, so it's interesting to read about these children as an adult woman where you're like, oh yeah,
Hmm.
everything tracks with how 16-year-olds would act in this
Yeah.
situation.
I don't know that I appreciated like the very intense sexism out of father was it Timothy?
Well, I mean, he did try to murder Elizabeth, so I don't think we're
He
supposed to
was
find
really a
him.
wild card. I'm not gonna lie. He was very much a wild card. I don't know why he just like his random and I want to say random appearances because it seemed like he would go off and then all of a sudden he would be back when we least expected him, and he was very much concerned with Greg defending Catholics who were going to be harmed, but then also not trying to keep people safe in any way that he could,
Right.
willing to, risk it all in order to try and save everyone, and
Yes.
then tried to manipulate Greg using the deaths of those people that he put in danger, and
Yes.
then wanted to, just be very sexist. So it was, there were a lot of ups and downs with that character for sure, where I was like, I don't know how to feel about him. He really just kind of comes out of nowhere. I don't know. And I don't know if
Chaotic
how we
neutral.
were supposed to react to him.
I think he was chaos neutral. Like he was because like he
Think
would just
so?
come in and he would just make a mess and then he'd just leave.
Yeah.
Because like it
He
is
really would. He
interesting.
would just like take off. He would appear and then he would, try to appeal to Greg and then he would take off again.
But I mean, I also felt very like sympathetic towards him
I mean, I
until
understand what he's going like,
because
or not
like he
not what
is
he's
trying
going
to
through, but what he's
protect.
saying.
Yeah, he's trying to protect like an entire like group of people from dying and he does legitimately think that that's going to happen and then it does
Sure.
happen at the end and then he blames Greg because he's like well you have the power to fix it and I do think that that is the messier part of this if we're looking at this as like the overarching history like it's told by the victors it's not told by those who are harmed and so like Greg does have the privilege of removing himself and stepping away and like that is what's happening and we're seeing it but it doesn't mean that
But
there
it
isn't.
doesn't remove Father Timothy from any kind of blame in this,
No,
where he literally kind of set them up, unfortunately. He drew attention to them.
he did it in a very bad way. He needed to talk to
Yeah.
some organizers on how to actually like build coalitions
Yep.
because like he was doing it from a place of his own privilege, it felt like, where he's like, well, I am a master, like I preach to the people. This is what I do.
Hmm.
So I'm going to do this the exact same way as I've done everything else. And it's like, but you don't understand that you're not in your privileged space when you do something like that. And you are not as protected as you would be in this situation where you're used to acting like that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it was kind of tragic too that the character Mary that like took care of
Yeah.
them all this time, that we didn't really get any kind of ending with her, that she died in that fire. That was very unfortunate.
Yeah. It was upsetting. I felt bad for her. Especially when like I don't know, there were so many points of this novel that like yes, you got spot on with the teenagers, but it also like was quick to point out how tragic that can be when you have these
Yeah.
young people who are involved in these high positions of power where like Mary I just keep thinking about like Mary
There's a lot
digging
of
up.
immaturity and a lack of education and understanding because you're
Mhm.
still young.
Yeah.
Like you and I would not have been good world leaders at age 16. We just
Yeah.
would not have. And I
I thought I was going to be a great real world leader at 16. I went up
at
against
16
my
you were going to be like a
I
good.
asked for a private meeting with my principal and with the director of
I'm not saying like you thought
no
when you
like
were 40. I mean like at 16 you were like, I am prepared right now.
yes, like no,
Oh,
I was taught I was given a very bloviated sense of self. Like I we had an issue with my cross country team and I asked for a meeting with the principal and with the dean of sports and athletics. And my parents said, "Do you want
okay.
us to be there?" And I was like, "I can handle this myself." And then I ended up sobbing through the entire thing because I was a child and I was not
See.
prepared. And to this day, my dad goes, "I think it was a mistake that I didn't go in with you." And I was like, upon retrospect, I also think it was a mistake you didn't go
Oh
in with me.
gosh.
Why did you let the 17-year-old make that decision? Like,
That's fair.
uh,
But and maybe that is very accurate of 16-year-olds. I guess I'm thinking now, like, I know me at 16 would not have been a very good leader.
uh, yeah, I don't,
Terrible.
I had a very big sense of justice with very little places to put it. So,
And
uh,
I feel like that's maybe another message of this, is that when you give like a message of like, who do we give our power to? What
yes.
happens when power is in the hands of certain people? And I think, Bernadette's not that old. She was what, 20? I mean, she's
Yeah.
not that old, so it's interesting to see how a privileged young person handles power, and
Hmm.
how the desire for power, people that seek out power, often the ones that, make a mess. So,
Yeah. And
yeah.
sometimes they just want to hire a fire breather and their sister to be excited. They hired a fire breather.
Yeah.
Also,
Why is she
perfect
so
sibling
obsessed with
energy of
fire?
like, hey, I hired this thing I'm really excited about. Could you be excited too? And the sibling's like, no, that's your thing. That's not my thing. That's that's such a funny thing. But yeah, it's an interesting book on like themes of power because I think it's a book that like took very different directions than I was expecting in a lot of
Yeah,
ways. So, um,
absolutely.
any final thoughts? Anything we didn't discuss? I mean, we mentioned it a lot during the plot episodes, but like this is a stark
Mhm.
look at like what trauma does to people and how
Oh,
people
absolutely.
react.
Like I think that some of the flashbacks and things on the abuse that they underwent were very interesting to read about and how the author kind of portrayed the ways that it shaped their relationship growing up in a situation where they were both abused by their father. So
Right.
I think that that's very interesting from the standpoint of how does abuse from a parent or older figure in your life bring you together as siblings or push you apart from one another. And yeah, that's very interesting.
I agree. Uh, all right. Anything else? Well, that is our final episode of Indie Mission, our special Indie Mission. That was a
Intermission.
it was a showdown to for them all. So everyone,
We'll be back to the voting next time.
yes, we will be back to voting next time. But just so you guys know, a quick rundown. We're headed into December. December is usually our month where we kind of just do some things that are a little bit different. We still give you the
It never
same
used to be that
content.
way, but then it just like started being that way because of somehow it ended up like schedule wise that we ended a series and then we had the month of December off.
Because
And
we didn't
now
want
we
to
just
start a
kind of,
brand new series.
yeah, now we just kind of schedule things so they don't start a new series in December. Then it gives us a little more free time.
It does. And it also it brings us a lot of enjoyment. So I also think like a lot of podcasts take the month of December off. We still want to give you like good content. We still want to do that, but like we don't always need to do a deep dive. And who wants to read a brand new book in a brand new series in the month of December? So,
I mean, you
uh
should because some of the stuff we covered was really good and you
yeah,
should pick up their works.
you should pick up their works because on December 4th, we have an interview with Moses Ose Otuomi for The Lies of the Ajunko and the Truth of the Alege. And he was amazing. He's fantastic. We love him, support everything he does. Go pick up these books. They're
That
very
interview
small.
meant so much to me. I was so thrilled that we were able to get Moses on.
We
Like, I
cold called
love
that
those
man
books
on Twitter
so
and he
much.
said, of course I'll come on. So he was wonderful. And we're gonna hopefully have him on in the new year for a TV Tuesday. So make sure you're checking out next week's interview. Make sure you're picking up those books. They're so short and they're so good. There's just so much
Yes.
power in them. So please go pick them up and read
Once
them.
you start them, you'll just finish them right away because they're short and you won't want to stop.
December 11th is a little bit of a blast from the past because we will be covering Beautician and the Beast. Hannah brought up
Hannah
this
brought it up
movie.
previously,
And
and
we
I'm
decided that
intrigued.
Laura's gonna watch it. This movie that Hannah watched quite a lot growing up.
Interesting.
And I like there are certain lines that live in my brain, and now Laura's gonna watch this dumpster fire of a movie. I'm just gonna be
Okay.
honest with you. Like it's a dumpster fire. I can't help it. So sorry, but also you're welcome. But if you are
Okay.
interested in watching it before we discuss it, we will give a plot breakdown because I expect one person to watch the show, and it is Laura. So,
Cool. I
and
cannot find it anywhere streaming, so I'm gonna have to
oh,
buy it, I think.
and then December 18th, we have an interview with previous Indie Mission winner K.E. Andrews for her Hills of Heather
Yes.
and Bone book, a book that I was felt personally victimized by. So
That
everyone,
book made me cry a
that book made
lot.
me cry a lot. It made my sister-in-law cry when I told her why I was
Hmm.
crying. So like it's a very beautiful book. So please go pick that
Hmm.
up. It was a
Another
SPIFBO
book with good
finalist.
representation.
Um, and we both loved it. So please go pick that up before we cover it on December 18th. And then Christmas Eve, we get our year-end wrap up. You
It's the
are
last Wednesday of the
welcome
year.
for that. It's the last
Well,
Wednesday
I
of the
think
year.
Christmas Day, actually, I
Oh, it's
think
Christmas Day.
is,
You're correct. I'm so sorry. So Merry Christmas to all.
yeah,
It's
Christmas is the last Wednesday of the year, so that'll be
uh
our year-end wrap up.
yeah, and then it is back to regularly scheduled programming pretty much. So we just wanted to give you that little bit of a rundown.
Yeah.
If you want
And
to follow,
pick up the Broken Earth trilogy by N.K.
yes.
Jemisin because that's what we're covering in the new year.
I am going to be reading it on a plane to Germany for my honeymoon. So
That sounds amazing.
make sure that you guys are picking that up right now because we will be covering it in January. You can check all of that out over at ourpod.com or follow us on all of our social media platforms at OWWRpod. You can also email us any questions you have at
Mhm.
ourpod@gmail.com. Or you can
Or
join our
DM or
Discord.
Discord.
Please join our Discord, and you can join us over on Patreon if you so choose to support us over there. We would greatly
We'd really
appreciate it.
appreciate it.
Well, thank you for joining us for another indie mission. These are always really important. We
Thanks for
just
listening
love,
today.
yeah, we just love to like focus on an indie book by an indie author and just do a deeper dive. So we really appreciate all your time. And join us next week for our interview with Moses. Bye.
Bye.